Good afternoon. My name is Kirsten Lundgren. I am the Director of Economic and Workforce Initiatives here at the K4 Center. All of our work at the center is focused on the intersection of tech and racial justice. And we're very excited that today kicks off our broader Mobilizing for Racial Justice webinar series to build awareness of tech policy areas such as closing the digital divide, mitigating harmful impacts of algorithmic bias, and increasing access to capital for tech entrepreneurs of color. In this first session, we're teaming up with nonprofit Jobs for the Future to tackle the urgent topic of racially inclusive tech workforce development. And we use the word urgent purposefully. Given where we are in this moment of time, COVID has laid bare the compound inequalities Black, Latinx, and Indigenous people face in our labor market and economy. Coming out of the pandemic, it's estimated that more than 50% of displaced low-wage workers will need new skills to shift into higher wage occupations and in order to remain employed. So that's why today we're talking about the urgent need for new models in upskilling, reskilling, and hiring at scale to prepare workers of color for more durable jobs of the future. And we believe that tech and digital skills provide a critical gateway to that broader economy. Today, we'll be hearing multiple perspectives and case studies from across the tech ecosystem, from government, startups, more mature companies, education and community organizations, about how best to accomplish this goal. To kick us off today, we're joined by Chike Agu, Chief Innovation Officer at the Department of Labor, to share a national policy perspective on what racially inclusive workforce initiatives are being prioritized under the Biden administration. So Chike, welcome. Could you kick us off by sharing why racially inclusive tech workforce development is personally important to you and your role at the Department of Labor?
Sure. And first of all, just thank you so much to K4 Center for having me and for doing this event. Why is racially inclusive tech workforce and development so important? It's really a couple of reasons. I think one, particularly on a day when Juneteenth has now become a national holiday, we have seen just again and again for our soul as a nation, we have to have a workforce that includes everyone. And where there's no way that's going to be totally true unless for the tech workforce, which is becoming such a big part of our economy, that people of every racial hue, background, immigration status, place of birth are included. So that's one. It's important for us as a nation, as a civic culture, for us to do that. That's number one. Number two, when you look at, frankly, just the demographics of our country, we are growing more and more diverse. We need to make sure that if we're going to have, frankly, the workers to create the innovations of tomorrow, that we're drawing from everywhere and everyone in every community. We've heard this phrase a lot, that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. That is so true. But if we don't make that true, we're literally not going to have the innovators to populate fields like quantum computing, high performance computing, XR, and all these other things that are going to make the innovations of tomorrow. So in terms of being economically competitive, we have no choice. Lastly, and this is going to be really important. This is someone who spent a good amount of my career in the technology space. If we do not have people from the communities that we're talking about, underserved communities, whether they be people of color or otherwise, involved in the creation of these new technologies, they simply won't be as good because they simply won't be able to serve all the people that they're meant to serve. So again, this is really important for this country, one, because it's important just from a pure moral civic perspective. Secondly, to be economically competitive, we're not going to have the workers that we need unless we're racially inclusive. And thirdly, the innovations will not be as good unless we include everyone in our country in this creation. For me personally, about why I care so much about this, my family's a very classic immigrant story to this country. My grandparents and my family are from a small village in the middle of Nigeria that most Nigerians themselves will never go to and never visit. And what allowed my grandparents, none of whom went past middle school, or my parents who had Peace Corps volunteers, to frankly have me sit here, was they got a kind of a golden ticket to come here to get an education. And so when we think about that, when I think about the opportunity that they got that allowed me to sit here, the question is, how do we replicate more of that for more people? Because that story, while it is a wonderful story, is still too infrequent for too many people. And I believe that one of the ways to replicate what happened in my family for all families is to create that racially inclusive technology workforce that's going to be part of our nation's future and also part of our nation's soul and heritage going forward.
Thanks, Chike. So many of the Biden administration's investment plans are explicitly addressing racial inequality for the first time. How is this shaping what innovations the Department of Labor is prioritizing?
So I think it's important to take a step back, and there's a story probably in the New York Times earlier this week about, frankly, that training is necessary but insufficient to get people back into the workforce or into the workforce for the first time. And one of the examples that I always use when I talk about this, that skills are sufficient, are necessary but not totally sufficient to get people where they want to go economically, is that the fact that the majority of the majority of jobs are not posted. That's a really important thing. Let me say that again. The majority of jobs are not posted. So when we think about training, you can only train for a job that you know exists. And what we know is, in terms of particularly for underserved communities, that social capital to know when a job is going to come open, particularly in a very desired field like many parts of technology, requires not just, again, the skills, but the training, the relationships, the sponsorship from folks within those organizations to bring that talent in. So one important thing to say is that definitely in terms of us as a training field and a workforce development field, and also the workers themselves need to make sure that we have the skills, that they have the skills. But secondly, we need companies themselves to think about how are we actually opening the doors and making sure that the opportunities that we are all aware of are actually aware and transparent and visible to everyone, particularly those from communities we've overlooked for a long time. So that's just really an important point. Secondly, as we think about, okay, what are the innovations? Some of the innovations are not really technological at all. Very simply, when we think about the best workforce development that we've seen, you generally have three parties in really clear alignment. First is, frankly, our customer, the worker. How do we make sure that we're designing around them and using, frankly, design thinking and all the things that are really popular in Silicon Valley to design not around, frankly, a fancy consumer like you or I, Kirsten, but frankly, like folks from communities that we've overlooked for a long time. The second party is the employer. And the employer really needs to do two things. One, they need to make really clear what are the skills that they need. And I think as someone who used to be in industry, I would always remark that, frankly, we always thought we were being clear about the skills that we needed. But frankly, to the market, we weren't always. Being super precise and super clear about the skills, not necessarily the credentials or degrees, but the skills needed to do a certain job. And the employer also needs to, frankly, when that talent shows up, showing those skills, they need a way to bring that talent in. And that requires really rethinking how we bring on talent, really going to a skills-based hiring mode where I'm not hiring based on a degree or, frankly, who someone knows or who someone doesn't know, but really based on the competencies that person can show either at a certain point in time or over a period of time to bring in. Lastly, you have to think about the training provider, and that might be a higher education institution like a community college, that may be a community-based organization, but that training provider needs to be in tight coordination with that employer to hear what those skills are and also to really provide support to the worker the entire way. None of those innovations really require technology. It's really about coordination, which at times can be an innovation, particularly as someone now in the government. That coordination is really, really critical. Now, as you think about some of the really interesting technology plays that we've seen here, I think about a field like XR being used to, we've seen XR being used, when we see XR, I'm thinking about things like Oculus, HoloLens, and also a number of other smaller providers, but who are using virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality to basically train people in new and different ways. So you've seen this a lot in the retail space, for example, basically using a VR headset to train someone on customer service when a customer is angry, and you literally have an angry customer in front of you, and you have to be able to react and work in real time. But you've also seen in places like the insurance space where those types of headsets and tools are being used to train someone on how to investigate a house that's had a fire and that person's filed an insurance claim. Or thinking about for folks who are being trained to do things like mine inspections. How do we use virtual reality to train someone to do a mine inspection without actually going into a mine shaft? So those are the types of innovations that we need, but it starts with centering around the worker. What does the worker need? How do we make sure we're designing around them? Secondly, how do we have the employer telling us the skills they need and really being able to implement processes that make it easy for people from diverse communities to come into their organizations? And we have training providers who are listening to all of that and supporting the worker the entire way. And then you apply the fancy technologies. But you've got to start with that coordination, which at times can be the killer app, the killer innovation that makes this all possible. But we also have to remember that getting those skills are necessary but insufficient. And we also need organizations to make sure that they're making the opportunity transparent and available to all the parts of our country who want to be part of it.
Thanks so much, Chike. We really appreciate your perspective and certainly are looking forward to tracking what innovations the Department of Labor doubles down on. in the next critical months. So thank you so much. And next up, we'll launch into our first case study in which we explore the need to ensure that Black, Latinx, and Indigenous groups are included in durable jobs of the future in growing areas such as manufacturing, R&D, tech, and clean energy. And that's where they're most severely underrepresented. So we are very happy to have with us Yvette Ellis, CEO of Charger Help, an LA-based startup that's innovatively training workers to repair electric vehicle charging stations. So welcome, Yvette. How are you? We're asking all of our speakers today why racially inclusive tech workforce development is personally important to them. So I'm curious, how has this been important to you in your founding of Charger Help?
Being racially inclusive was not only weaved into the fabric of Charter Help, but I mean, my co-founder Camille and I, we are two Black women founders, so we know what the inequity looks like. We felt it, we've experienced it, and it was just really important not only that we say we're going to open up, say, clean tech or clean energy, we really want to create this pipeline for jobs for people of color, but for us in particular, Black people. And I think sometimes we use people of color so broadly that sometimes we forget to specifically make sure that certain folks of color, and for us, Black people, were included in this broad term. So it was really important because we both have cousins and uncles and friends that may not have went the traditional college route, but can fix anything, that are innovative and smart. And really, there was no opportunity for that demographic of folks. And we really want to create it, not only because we just wanted to, but because we could. This is kind of the Wild Wild West in EV infrastructure, and there's no reason why we can't create space and room for different levels of education and different backgrounds and different ethnic backgrounds, in particular, Black people.
Great, thank you, Yvette. And could you give a quick overview next of how Charger Help's sourcing, training, and hiring model works? It sounds very unique in its approach.
Our training model, that is really our business model. It was really important that we not only have it just as a training model, but that when people do business with us, they also have to interface with our training model as well. We have made a commitment to work with workforce development centers, agencies, programs, because we believe in A, hiring locally, B, we're not over concerned about teaching hard trades because we can train folks on how to do that. But really, we were looking for soft skills. And as we all know, that a degree or hard skills training, we can get soft skills you can't get everywhere. And we find that folks that have had maybe untraditional routes of employment or started from the bottom, kind of worked their way up, have the most innovative skill set. And we wanted to tap into that because we are in a very new space in EV infrastructure as far as the charging stations are concerned. It was really important that we got inquisitive people, that we got folks that are not scared or afraid or overwhelmed by a problem, that they are problem solvers, and that they are intrigued and revitalized when they solve a problem, and really interested in getting into a new space. I say all the time that these training centers, workforce development centers, often, unfortunately, the professionals that work there, the experts that work there, are kind of geared to move people into, I would say, spaces that we have been allowed to be in. And coming from a workforce development background, I know that to be true. Well, we really wanted to open up the tech space. I personally believe that tech is kind of on a pedestal and cherry picks who they want to hire, and that will never be equitable. So our training model is to source our talent from workforce development centers who our federal government is already paying for and pouring money into to train folks, but to train folks for what? Train folks to get into nothing innovative. So it makes sense that the tech industry, the clean tech industry, have to use the regular workforce development pipeline sources that every other industry needs to use. So we find people with great soft skills, we train them ourselves, and we put them out there with equitable wages. We don't do gig economy, we're full-time work. So they go from training to full-time equitable paying jobs. We start off at $30 an hour with full-time benefits. That alone can motivate someone to learn, believe me. We also pay close attention to different learning styles. They take a learning style test at the beginning of the recruitment process, so we know that we need to add in more visuals, that some people are audible, some folks are tactile and they need to touch, so we know we may not see them show up in the recruitment process until they can actually touch and show us what they need to do. Those things are important to be inclusive. It's not just always being racially inclusive. However, we have found that different races are stronger in different learning styles for a number of reasons, I'm sure. Where we come from, the education that we may have or been exposed to may contribute to that. But yes, we start at the very beginning. Also, our application, we want to see a video of you. We don't ask you to write 2 paragraphs about yourselves, because we know that everybody is not the best writer. And to be perfectly honest, every job does not require the same things. So we try to tap into the things that we need for the job, the desirable skill set, not just creating barriers for people to keep folks out.
So yes, it's quite powerful that you play the role of both the training provider and the employer and can positively impact the whole worker experience that way.
It's almost the only way to ensure equity.
Yes, that's a great takeaway, and very important to celebrate that startups are able to expedite inclusion sometimes faster than larger, older companies with entrenched culture and systems. So thank you for sharing those insights with us and for being here with us today. And now, switching gears on to our next case study, which centers on the need to modernize community colleges. Historically, funding for these institutions has typically lagged behind other institutions of higher education, resulting in lags in curriculum aligned with industry needs. So this is mostly problematic because community colleges disproportionately serve students of color and have a unique opportunity, therefore, to help connect them to pathways into tech. So today we're delighted to have Juan Salgado with us. He is Chancellor of the City Colleges of Chicago to talk about how his school system is innovating in this space. So Juan, tell us why racially inclusive tech workforce development is personally important to you.
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. This is such an important topic and more important imperative for our city in Chicago, but more globally, our entire country. You know, when I look out at our students, 75% of whom are African-American or Latinx, I see the strength, the vibrancy, the capacity, the brilliance, all the assets that they bring. And yet when I go into the tech workplaces here in my city and across the country, I see an absence. And it's visible, it's palpable, it's a missed opportunity for those companies, but it's a missed opportunity for our students. And so specifically in our city, you know, when you look at these occupations, yet they're not even in double digits. In some cases, not even close to the double digits in terms of participation of people of color. When you look at this nationally, you get the same trend, and it's unsustainable. It's unsustainable for local communities, but it's also unsustainable for these companies. And so it's an imperative that we get this right. And it starts early, by the way. We have a digital divide. We learned through the pandemic. You know, one of the communities we serve here in Chicago is through Kennedy King College in the Inglewood community, where, you know, to date, 23% of residents don't have a computer and don't have internet. And so, you know, they don't have the basics that will allow them to participate in society, let alone enter into the tech workforce. And so we are locating a tech center right in the middle of this community to make sure that we're bridging that digital divide, but make sure that we're also creating the kind of tech opportunities that we know exist in our city that we know our students are capable of excelling in. And that's, I think, our imperative. That's why it's really important to me.
Okay, and to ensure tech curriculum is modernized and relevant, what are the City Colleges of Chicago doing?
City Colleges has 7 campuses. We are infusing technology programs in all 7 campuses. We are ensuring program relevance for every single one of those programs, keeping pace with the changes in industry and technology. How? By being in direct communication with the companies themselves, those that have opportunities in the marketplace today, those that will have them in the future. We're meeting students where they're at, working with students to ensure that whatever skill building that they need to close those gaps are there. And we're also building lots of awareness. Awareness is really important of these opportunities and the diversity of them and the different ways in which you can enter into this industry. We're doing that as early as grade school in a partnership, one of the biggest partnerships between a community college and our K-12 system that we have in the country. We've built that, but not just with our K-12 system, also with community-based institutions and with adults in the workforce, incumbent workers that are already out there working, that understand that this is a marketplace that they can tap into. So raising awareness, meeting students where they're at, and ensuring program relevance, those are the things we need to be doing. What's really important is that we have work-based learning opportunities for our students to actually connect specifically with partners. We do that with global companies like Aon, Accenture, Chase, and several others that are creating IT internships and apprenticeships. We launched in Chicago, the Chicagoland Apprenticeship Network, with a set of businesses that are opening up these opportunities. And we're also opening up training academies in partnership, for instance, with Fortinet, with Amazon, with Cisco, with Google, Apple, and a local company called SDI Presence. These are all companies that have specifically advised us, that are bringing their certifications and their training academies to our campuses in partnership. We're taking a step further in some cases to partner with training providers in the private sector who can bring their knowledge onto our campus. Right now, we're doing that through a partnership with a company called Catalyte, who's training our students and providing apprentices that leads right into software developer positions. And we do that in a wide range: cybersecurity, web development, network technology, software development, again, informed by industry partners. We're about to add data science, cloud computing, and we're also looking at how we infuse tech in the specific areas where we're doing training, whether that's in automation or mechatronics or robotics, or in the healthcare field. So looking at, strengthening our students' ability that, in the tech field, that are entering into these other occupations. And so these are the things that we're doing right now that we think are moving the needle.
Thank you, Juan. And could you close by talking about what top policy changes at the federal, state, and local levels you would call for to address modernization challenges and scale the solutions you've discussed today?
Well, again, I think the Biden administration really understands this and is working hard to make it a reality. I mean, the idea of free community college that includes short-term programs and continuing education programs is really no doubt something that will help our local communities. You have to think about the folks coming through these programs are simultaneously working. Our students here, they're caretakers, they're essential workers, and they're studying. They're trying to piece it all together. And one bit of added support goes a long way. And so the idea of free community college, I think, complemented, and again, the Biden administration is thinking about this too, complemented with supports, or what people traditionally will talk about wraparound supports, tutoring, wellness centers, transfer career centers, the kinds of things that lead you to be successful and make that connection to the next step. And so in the proposals that the Biden administration has outlined so far, both of these components are already in there. The third one that's already in there is the understanding that, look, we need broadband access all across the country in every place if we're truly going to tap into all the potential talent that exists in every nook and cranny, urban and rural, across the country. And so ensuring broadband access, putting that infrastructure in place across the country, I think is really critical. And we have to grow the work-based learning opportunities. The best industries have put these systems in place. The reason why we have a healthcare pipeline is because we have clinical rotations where people go in and take the knowledge that they learn, they apply it, and then at the end of the day, we get the prepared nurses and doctors that we need in the economy. We need to do that in the area of information tech, in cybersecurity, in all of these areas. If we're truly going to be competitive, we're truly going to protect our institutions, our companies from attacks in the future, and take advantage of the opportunities that this industry will have to continue to grow, then we need to get serious about having a systematic way for students to learn, okay, in a classroom setting, but also learn in a work setting as they go on to productive and long, fruitful careers.
Thank you so much, Juan. That actually tees up perfectly our third case study on apprenticeship, which is an efficient model combining classroom and work-based learning that is starting to gain more traction in the US and in tech. Unlike an internship, apprenticeships are much longer in duration. They're highly structured and they are geared towards job conversion. Unfortunately, fewer than 30% of tech apprenticeships are held by people of color. And so we have Kelly Hux here today with us, talent partner at tech company Twilio, who joins us to discuss these issues, as well as the importance of skill-based hiring that is often a feature of apprenticeship. So hi, Kelly. Same question we've been asking everyone. Could you tell us why racially inclusive workforce development is personally important to you at Twilio?
Yeah, Kirsten, my name is Kelly Hux. I am a recruiter and program manager at Twilio for the Hatch program, which is our apprenticeship program for software engineers. And a racially and economically inclusive workforce is important to me for one reason, because I am Black, so I identify as part of the group that you're trying to target. So it's important that others are getting opportunity to enter this space and really have amazing jobs at amazing companies. It's also important to me and at Twilio as an anti-racist company, just to try to help correct some of the injustices that have been done in the past, and really, again, continue giving that opportunity to those that may have not pursued higher education, maybe because of financials, maybe because of other issues that have come up that are, again, related to their race. So it's just important that we try to do the right thing in a way.
Thanks, Kelly. And can you tell us why the Twilio Hatch Engineering Apprenticeship was created and how the program is structured differently than an internship?
The Hatch Apprenticeship program was created at Twilio as a way to enable us to give access to software engineering careers to those that are underrepresented or don't have access to traditional training, which would be like your university college CS, computer science degree. So we really wanted to create a space to do additional training and to provide additional support, mentorship to those with different backgrounds to enable them to succeed in software engineering. Our program is a little bit different from your typical internship. So our internship at Twilio is a 12-week internship program between the junior and senior year of university. So again, it's traditional. Our apprenticeship program is a 6-month program. So they spend 2 months in the program working solely with our R&D development team. And then they spend another 4 months with the team that they would convert into continuing to build those skills, continuing with the mentorship, and just really getting them comfortable, building some of that confidence as a software engineer as well.
Okay, Kelly. And so the goal for an apprenticeship is around conversion, whereas interns typically go back to school, correct?
So the goal of the program is really conversion of these apprentices to software engineering roles at Twilio. We're glad to say that we do have about a 96% conversion rate right now with the 6 cohorts that we have run over the last 3 years. And that's also alongside the goal of, increasing the access and diversity of our teams as well.
Okay, Kelly, and can you share specifics about the innovations Hatch leverages that explicitly ensure racial inclusion in the program, particularly around skill assessment? I'll just quickly share this alarming stat that degree-based hiring screens out over 70% of Black and 80% of Latinx job candidates. So would love if you could expand upon that.
Yeah, so some of the innovations that we're doing in the Hatch program would kind of circle around our application process and what we're looking for from candidates. We're not looking for, those traditional computer science graduates from a 4-year school. Some of our students might not have ever gone to college. They might have completed a GED. They might have gone to school for some other discipline and are switching careers. But basically what we do is we work closely with some of our local partners. So it might be a workforce and development for a city, could be a nonprofit organization, potentially boot camps as well. And we work with those to try to find talent and to make sure that talent's coming into our pipelines. But we're also in the application process, not just looking at where they might have done the training or like the technical assessments. We're also looking at some of the soft skills. So transferable skills, if you've worked in other roles, maybe you worked in sales previously, so you probably are a good communicator. Maybe you've worked in teams previously, and that's a skill that we would want for our software engineers as well. So we're really looking at the whole person and what they bring to the table and not just the education piece of it.
Kelly, could you let us know, to scale inclusive apprenticeship, what would you like to see change?
Yeah, so there are definitely some barriers to scaling these apprenticeship programs. Even at Twilio, having had the apprenticeship program for a few years now, and it's pretty established, there's still, limitations when it comes to manpower. The apprenticeships, they take work, like developing the training takes work, doing the training, providing the mentorship. But it's all about, your return on investment there. So the return that we've seen has been great, great enough that we're willing to continue to explore scaling. What are other options, that we can consider as we look at manpower as a limitation? Can we get other teams involved and help with key parts? Or do we hire more staff to help scale the program? So that's definitely a huge issue, but there's lots of ways we can look at it and improve, I think, for the future.
And what about with the training partners side of the equation? Is there anything else on that side?
Yeah, with the training programs, I think there's A barrier there in terms of access. If we look at some of the programs that even some of our own apprentices haven't completed, they might be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And that in itself is a barrier to getting that non-traditional education. And that's why we as a company do work with some of our nonprofits and government organizations to see if we can attract candidates that are doing the more low cost option that's also super effective, equally effective. So those training programs are great. I think we need more that are a little more cost effective or provide options, because I think a lot of people don't realize that cost truly is a barrier for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, that's great points, Kelly. Yes, we too often see in our ecosystems an abundance of free exposure training programs and a shortage of affordable advanced level programs that can actually get people into a job. So this definitely deserves more exploration. So thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us today. And then switching gears a bit, we think it's especially important to ground our discussion with a community perspective. So having real talk about what happened and is currently happening on the ground to Black and Brown communities during COVID, how funders and employers can be more effective in responding to their needs. To talk about that, we're thrilled to have Geraldine Rodriguez with us, CEO of the Knowledge House. She'll discuss her nonprofit's work building tech talent pipelines in the Bronx. Geraldine, welcome. Let me start by asking, I would imagine there were many pivots you needed to make during COVID to support the changing needs of tech talent you serve. Could you tell us a bit about some of those biggest pivots?
Absolutely. So since COVID, like everyone else, we had to transition to a virtual environment. And even as someone that really thinks we are a tech company, even though we're a nonprofit, and we have technologists like our staff, our students, they're all pretty technical. It still, required us to look at the education and workforce development sector, see what other partners were doing. And we had to test things like Google Hangouts, right? Versus Zoom. We ended up using Zoom. And, I think everyone experienced things like that. But we actually saw most of our population suffer from the pandemic because traditionally, Knowledge House students are underemployed. They come to us with part-time jobs on the weekend or on a rotating schedule. But since COVID, 90% of our students have been unemployed or furloughed. And so just understanding they need some cash to even persist through our program that will get them a job afterwards. And so as an organization, we just had to step up, and we had to tell our volunteers, our board, and our corporate partners to step up. And so we launched a fundraising campaign to really match our students with cash assistance. We were able to give them $200 to $300 a month just to cover their basic living expenses while they were not getting income. And we also used this fundraising campaign to tell corporations, we know that your offices are closed. If y'all have computer desktops that are not being used, if you have laptops that you want to donate, we need to match all of our students, not only with a laptop, but with a MiFi, and also a monitor and headphones so that their virtual experience is successful. And we're really lucky that, especially after the murder of George Floyd, corporations did step up. And so we were able to match our students with cash assistance. We got partnerships to match students with a MiFi and laptops and monitors. But we also got these corporations to mobilize all of their employees to volunteer. And so that really was the benefit. For the first time, we were able to match every job trainee to a mentor who works in the tech industry. And that one-to-one match has been game-changing because the mentors tutor, they provide career talks, but they are the ones referring our graduates to their employers. And so through this campaign, we just found really meaningful ways to partner with businesses through volunteer engagements, actual funding and in-kind donations, but also employment. And so we ended up with 10 corporate sponsors that, supported our students, supported the organization, 100 plus volunteers that led to that one-to-one mentor-mentee match. And we are projecting an 80% placement rate. because we literally have corporations that have signed up to take on interns. And that's a part of our model. So our programs are 1 year long. So it's 9 months of job training and then a 3-month paid internship. We do not pay for that, right? The employers pay market rate for the intern. And the expectation is if the intern is successful, then that intern becomes a full-time engineer at your company. And so, COVID, the murder of George Floyd, presented new opportunities for us to work more meaningfully with corporations. And because of that, our students are now better supported, right? Not only through wraparound services and tech access, but just more access to the tech industry and professionals that have their back.
And so we learned that your nonprofit helps place people of color from the Bronx into tech internships at the height of COVID. We'd love to hear your thoughts on why we aren't seeing similar job-based learning programs offered at scale.
So in terms of job training programs offering upskilling at scale, there are systemic barriers to that. When we think about just philanthropy and how they choose to fund, they are still funding the largest organizations and the oldest organizations. And for workforce development nonprofits in tech, especially, these nonprofits that get a lot of philanthropy are not led by people of color. Because they started offering IT training years ago, right? Like 25 years ago plus, they are still teaching IT certifications. Like they're teaching to IT certs. And so newer nonprofits that are providing tech training are delivering more modern technology training, like cloud technology, DevOps training, software engineering, right? And it just so happens these nonprofits, because they're younger and they're smaller, they're not supported at the same levels as these bigger organizations. And so that's a disparity thing. And it's an access thing because it means that low-income job seekers have less options to train for the higher paying jobs in tech, right? I think philanthropy also, to be responsive to the job market, just needs to familiarize themselves with the future of work. For the Knowledge House, we don't teach web development or software engineering certifications because we don't find that employers accept them. There is still not a widely employer accepted certification for computer programming. So we equip our students to have the best GitHub portfolio that they can and the best work portfolio that shows all of their projects. And that is what employers look for. Sometimes philanthropy do not want to fund solutions that do not equip job seekers with a certification. And that's literally because they are not up to date with the future of work, with the growing gig economy, and the fact that for coders, there is no certification. And so philanthropy just needs to be closer to the work, right? Like we literally need funders to talk to people on the ground. And we need philanthropy and community organizations to work hand in hand with employers. We actually have been able to facilitate job matching with our internship partners, and it has proven to be so equitable. At the Knowledge House, most of our students are Black and Brown. We do have a small percentage of Asian students, mostly Southeast Asians, and a handful of like white low-income students, right? And it's really interesting because you can see the disparities when it comes to their employment outcomes, right? The Knowledge House, we are so proud to be inclusive and have students of all races and all colors. But we already know that we expect the industry to hire our white and Asian students at a faster rate than the Black and Brown students. And we literally saw that this year. So we saw that students who reached out to potential employers, started their job search early, and they like didn't get employment through our internship program, they got picked up, right? But it actually took a partnership between employers and the Knowledge House to actually get them to hire our Black and Brown technologists. And when you check the data, we do not have our Black and Brown technologists performing like less or at lower levels than their Asian and white counterparts. It's pretty equal, but the industry is still hiring whites and Asians at higher rates. And so to speak a little more on our internship program, we have our business and partnerships manager pitch our students to our corporate partners. Our corporate partners include volunteer partners or corporations that fund the Knowledge House, and obviously they're hiring technologists, so we want them to hire our graduates. And so once they make a commitment to hire an intern, they become an employer partner. And when we work directly with our employer partners, we put a resume book in front of them. Our resume book is a compilation of resumes that are anonymized. So they don't get to see the name of the graduate and the student. They don't get a link to their LinkedIn. So we eliminate biased hiring from the process. Employers rank the resumes that they want to interview, and then we do the matching that way. And that literally results in equitable hiring. We have our Black women in internships right now, and we have our Latinx students in internships right now, because employers directly worked with a nonprofit that is focused on racial equity. When the nonprofit is not there, you don't see the equity. And so that's the thing. A year ago, all of these companies said, we want to hire more Black and brown technologists, but the data says otherwise. And so we know that private and public partnerships, nonprofit and corporate partnerships work. And so we just have to invest in them more. So we need nonprofits that provide job training to work directly with employers and corporations to really create systems change.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Geraldine, for your critically important work uplifting communities during COVID. We certainly need to make sure our funders are funding future-oriented solutions and to hold tech companies accountable for the commitments they've made to not just volunteer with Black and brown talent in classrooms, which is important, but also to hire talent into jobs. So thank you so much again, Geraldine. We've now reached our final speaker of the day, Michael Collins. Michael is Vice President at Jobs for the Future, and he's also co-host of this webinar. I wanted to connect things back to something Chike Agu at the Department of Labor had called for in our very first discussion today, the need for more research and insights to understand what is actually effective for advancing low-wage workers in a more data-driven way. So Michael joins us to talk about an initiative JFF is launching that's focused on Black learners and workers and bringing evidence-based solutions to life. So welcome, Michael. Can you start by telling us more about this new initiative and why it was dreamed up at JFF?
Well, I mean, first, I think, one of the ways that we are approaching this is, first thinking about, what the trends are telling us. And we learned so much from the unfortunate events of last year. When we looked at what happened to kind of Black learners and workers in our economy, we saw that they were disproportionately likely to be low-wage workers, frontline workers, essential workers, really kind of in harm's way of being displaced by technology. So first and foremost, I think what we wanted to do was to identify, kind of one, like what's working, like to enter kind of digital and tech jobs that launch careers, what's working, what's effective. We wanted to begin to do some scanning to find out, where we're seeing some success points, not just for entry into digital and tech jobs, but also advancement. And, once we did that, we wanted to kind of begin to create and develop a framework for, to raise information and awareness about, what Black learners and workers need to be successful in a kind of a tech and digital economy. And following on what they need, what barriers, particularly barriers erected by racist kind of systems and structures, keep them from getting what they need to enter kind of digital and tech jobs. And then finally, what types of solutions should we be thinking about to kind of combat those barriers, to kind of dismantle those barriers, to create not just, again, entry, but also successful advancement. So we've been working on some scanning to try to identify some best practices that we want to bring to the field. We're also developing a framework to really get a handle on and kind of draw attention to what Black learners and workers need to enter this field, what they aspire to. We know that Black learners and workers aspire to good jobs. They want to be a part of the economy. They want to be a part of the growing economy. And tech and digital is central to that. So getting clear on that, and then clear on the barriers and clear on the solutions. So that's how we are entering this space. And in all kind of fairness and in transparency, we are humbled by kind of both the challenge, but we're also just so excited about the opportunity. We feel like if we can make inroads here, we are taking a step towards strengthening Black learners and workers' position in what we know will be an increasingly kind of digital economy.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, for spearheading this important work. We're excited to be involved as advisors here at the Cape Force Center, and hope others will be inspired to get involved as well. And next, to close us out, I'm curious what your primary call to action is under this new administration and as we move into the COVID economic recovery.
So I think it's a great question. And I think really the opportunity in this moment and with this administration is for us to really kind of tackle the multiple dimensions of the challenge that we're facing. Again, it's not just about kind of access to tech jobs, but the other dimensions of that are, kind of the social or, determinants of work, right? So to enter kind of the tech field, to advance, in that field, where Black learners and workers are right now, many of them will need support to prepare, to be aware of the different opportunities. So implications for, support for preparation, support for upskilling, reskilling, to be positioned for success in this field, as well as, kind of the need for kind of wraparound supports, even, kind of emergency supports. Many kind of Black learners and workers suffer from, financial insecurity. And so we have to acknowledge that context. And it's not just kind of tech jobs, exist out of, the context in which Black learners and workers are living and working. And we know that historically, and in this moment in particular, that community is vulnerable in this economy and they struggle in this economy. So we have to, I think, in this moment, as we're thinking about inclusive access, that we're thinking about kind of the multiple dimensions of being successful entering the tech field and advancing in the tech field. And then finally, I will say one of the really important opportunities that we have in this moment is to really acknowledge and hold ourselves accountable for the reality of the need for lifelong learning. And I don't mean that in kind of like an intellectual construct. We have to create the infrastructure for Black learners and workers and others, right, to continuously upskill and reskill. And we know that this is a part of our reality. It's for all of us. It's not just for people who are experiencing poverty or people who are earning low wages at this time. It's for our kind of economic survival, if you will. And so more than other communities, those who are vulnerable in this economy really need support to be able to, kind of see around the corner, see the trends, begin to have the supports to begin to learn and develop kind of the skills and develop competencies in the areas where the field is going. We know there's rapid change in digital and IT, and we want to make sure that there is the support infrastructure for Black learners and workers to continue to get the skills that they need so that they are kind of central to the tech economy and the digital workforce. Again, this is all about access. I say the digital economy, but it's really to the economy. Digital is such a large part of the American economy.
Yes, supporting lifelong learning infrastructure. I do love that. And I think that infrastructure is just as important to build, if not more so, than any physical infrastructure we're planning to build in this country. So thank you for making that point, Michael. Yes, thank you so much, Michael, for your closing thoughts. Today, we learned so much from you and all of our speakers working across the tech ecosystem. And it's quite clear that close collaboration across stakeholders will really be the key to ensuring that no single entity bears the full cost of doing this work on their own. And before we wrap up, the K4 Center and Jobs for the Future wanted to quickly highlight 2 calls to action from our organizations. First, you can continue to follow the K4 Center's Mobilizing for Racial Justice Tech Policy series at justice.k4center.org. There you can read about our policy stances, how to take action, and find out when we're hosting additional webinars in this series. Second, to stay up to date on JFF's work advancing Black learners and workers, visit jff.org/ourworkahead. Again, they'll be convening an advisory group in this area, creating new research frameworks, and sharing updates on what's needed and working. So yes, please stay in the loop, stay connected, and join us in action. We look forward to seeing you at our next Mobilizing for Justice webinar. And on behalf of the K4 Center and Jobs for the Future, thank you so much for joining and have a great day.